Hello and welcome into the Take the North podcast, which is originating from Ford Field, where Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune and myself, Mark Grote of Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score, just watched a Thanksgiving game that you will never forget. The Bears lose to Detroit 23-20, the final score. The Chicago Bears have now lost 6 straight games. They are 4-8, and it's definitely worth pointing out that is 10 straight wins for the Detroit Lions. They moved to 11-1. This was, at the very least, a crazy game where the Bears were essentially embarrassed in the first half of this game. It was embarrassing to watch the first half, and I'll get into some more of that, but the Bears looked awful in every way, shape, and form. They were not ready. I don't care how good the Detroit Lions are. The Bears were not ready to go in the first half of this game. Offensively, embarrassing. Defensively, don't tell me Andrew Billings meant that much to the Bears' run defense. And yeah, Detroit has 2 good run stoppers, or good runners, and David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, but it was pathetic to watch. The Bears did come back and then blew it in the end again. Poor clock management, which I will outline completely. But Dan, opening comments to you, my friend.
My first comments are happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you and to everybody else. I'm sorry I didn't say that. This was it doesn't feel like when you're working these games, it doesn't feel, listen, you don't feel Thanksgiving except
let's get
for 10:30
past the pleasantries, right? Yeah. And let's get into the meat
enough
of this.
That, correct.
It's 7:51 p.m. Detroit time, and I just picked my jaw up off the floor of the press box. I don't usually speak with a level of disbelief and agitation as I will after this loss, but like the ability of this football team to find new and humiliating ways to lose games, and today to have it come in front of a national audience that lets the entire world know where your football program is. I don't know how this isn't the end for Matt Eberflus, Mark Grote. I don't know when the deadline will come for Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles to say this is it. We've got to move on. But everything that you just described goes out the window when the Bears have a final drive that, oh, by the way, starts at their own 1-yard line with a rookie quarterback in a raucous road environment and winds up with 1st down and 10 in the final minute at the Lions 25, and yet somehow winds up in absolute chaos, commotion, and disorder with the Bears running one final play in the last 32 seconds on a desperation heave that wasn't even really that close from Caleb Williams to Rome Odunze, and no one really having a clear-cut answer for why they didn't use their final freaking timeout to get things settled down in a moment like this. Grote, it's astounding. I used the word astounding 36 times on the elevator down to the locker room, 17 times while we were in line waiting to get in the locker room, 6 times to players while we were talking to them in the locker room, and 37 more times when we got out of there. This was freaking astounding today.
Let me just go through what happened at the end of the game for the benefit of people who were not paying really close attention.
Start if you have the game book, because I don't have mine in front of me. First and 10 at the 25, and then let's see how it all unravels.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't even get a game time playoff.
And then I've got some great audio from the locker room, from Caleb Williams, from Matt Eberflus, from Keenan Allen, from DJ Moore that will tell it all. We have one piece of tape during this show, but I think what I put together, I think will resonate more deeply than anything we've probably played on this podcast, at least since I have been here. But here we go. End of the game, 23-20 Detroit. Bears had the ball, as you said, Dan, on the Detroit 25, 43 seconds left. Again, 23-20 Detroit. After a timeout, by the way, 2nd and 10, Tevin Jenkins, illegal use of the hands penalty, no doubt about it. The guy's helmet came off. Tevin didn't really push back in the locker room on that. Ball now on the Detroit 35. You're 10 yards backed up.
Still in field goal range, though. Still in field goal range.
Still in field goal range. You got 43 ticks left still. 2nd and 20. Caleb Williams then is sacked. It's a 6-yard loss. 36 seconds left on the clock. Dan, what do you do right there if you're Matt Eberflus?
Well, if you want to do what Matt Eberflus chose to do, which is get the next play in and try to get it run, you at least have to have an awareness if there is some sort of hesitance in getting that play set up, aligned, and organized. And if there is 6 seconds of confusion, you have to look up at the clock, feel it slipping away from you, look in your pocket and go, oh, I've got a third and final timeout to use, and you use it. You calm the situation down just like you should have calmed the freaking situation down in Washington before the Hail Mary, and yet you let it play out. And as you mentioned, 36 seconds. I think it's 32 seconds when Caleb Williams gets engulfed by Zadarius Smith, who, by the way, was unblocked by reserve right tackle Larry Borum, who was in because Darnell Wright left the game with a knee injury. 32 seconds left. Let's watch this thing go tick, 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 boom.
32 seconds left. No timeout is called. That is the egregious error that is made. No timeout. 3rd and 26. Clock runs all the way down to 6 seconds. Final heave to Rome Odunze is incomplete. Ball game is over. You have mismanaged your time. Dan, you and I were in the locker room. We were both in similar scrums. Here is who you're going to hear from in order, and I think by now you guys recognize the voices, but let me give them to you. You will hear from, again, in this order, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Kyler Gordon, Matt Eberflus, and Caleb Williams, and this is all concerning the game, the end of the game. Again, here we go, starting with DJ Moore. Go.
We keep coming back in these games and be having time to actually win the game, and we just shit the bed.
Are you assuming there's going to be a timeout after that sack? I mean, just your veteran mind?
Yeah, you want it to be, but at the same time, it didn't get called, but just got to go out there and execute.
No, it was tough. I feel like we did enough as players to win the game.
Were you surprised that a timeout wasn't called there in the final 30 seconds?
Once I seen the Detroit Lions walking on the field, I'm like, damn, what they doing?
Yeah.
What's going on? I didn't realize the time it ran out. I'm like, the time was running the whole time. We didn't. And you look up at we realize we got a timeout, and it's like, yeah.
I think there's one underlying reason why the end of the game situations have gone the way they've gone.
I don't know. Next question. No comment.
And then we're there at 2nd and 20. Take the sack right there. And, so we're at 36 seconds right there. And our hope was, because it was 3rd going into 4th, that we would re-rack that play at 18 seconds, throw it inbounds, get it into the field goal range, and then call the timeout. And that's where it was, and that was our decision-making process on that. Again, we were outside the field goal range, so we needed to get a few more yards in there, as close as we can get, and then we were going to call timeout, and that's why we held that last timeout at the end of the game.
Are you surprised there wasn't a timeout called, though? Are you surprised?
Surprised? We can call a timeout. We cannot. Surprised, I'm not going to say surprised or not. My job is to go out there and make plays. My job is to get everybody lined up. And that's it, win games. So didn't do that today. I could have gave Rome maybe a little bit more of a jump ball in that situation instead of maybe trying to throw it over the shoulder or anything like that. But, with that situation, that's not what happened.
Dan, the most damning of those two, I thought, were two quotes. Keenan Allen, we did enough as players to win the game. That he's being very clear there. That is an indictment on the coaching staff and the time management that happened at the end. And then Kyler Gordon with the no comments there. And by the way, I edited out about a 20-second pause from Kyler Gordon before he said that, before he's hemming and hawing and wondering if he should actually say something real. And then they know what, Dan, expand on that. They know what it is. That's what that locker room was like. They know what it is.
Yeah, this locker room is done with its head coach. They know that the football world knows that their head coach is headed for the exits. Matt Eberflus, after the game, acknowledged that he knows this is the NFL and this is where it's headed. I asked Matt directly how he handles the situation of having the confidence of his players in him so shaken right now. And he says, we got to keep pulling together. Well, Cole Kmet had talked about that message a few minutes earlier in the locker room and said, you can only hear the same message so many times without it feeling a little bit hollow, and basically said, at this point, we want the results. We don't need all this rhetoric about sticking together and pulling together and tough times don't last. People do whatever, Grote. Like this is the end for Matt Eberflus here today. It's a shocking, stunning end to his coaching tenure. I don't know when they're going to pull the trigger, whether it'll be before they get back in the building on Friday, before they get back in the building on Monday, before they clean out their lockers on locker clean out day after week 18. I don't know when it is, but there's no coming back from this. And everyone knows that at this point. And the players know that. And you could feel that in the locker room, that their dejection and their understanding that this 6-game losing streak could easily be a 3-3 stretch or a 4-2 stretch or whatever it may be with some coaching competence. These guys are agitated and somebody's got to answer to them for that.
Multiple players I want to be clear here really quick, Dan. You think he's gone before the season's over, just to be clear?
No, I just think he's gone. Like he's fired. Like Matt Eberflus is fired. The time of death we'll wait on. Okay. But he is fired. He will not coach a game in the regular season of 2025. Now it's up to the people upstairs to figure out what all of this looks like, what this dance looks like, and how they get themselves most gracefully across the finish line of this season.
Couple of notes. We have been told that Matt Eberflus is scheduled to speak on Friday at 9 a.m. via Zoom, which is normal. Yeah, I should be very clear on that too. Yes, for road games, that is typical. A little earlier than usual, but that's nothing to read into. Being that he is speaking, it does not suggest that tomorrow he would be getting fired. And my gut still is not in season, but it was weird. There's a couple of weird things in the locker room after the game today, because there was confusion about whether or not Matt Eberflus had addressed the team before he took to the podium after the game, because some players said he didn't. So I know DJ Moore said that, but DJ Moore said he was getting some medical stuff done. And there were some other players who said that as well. Now, Flus said that he did say some stuff, their usual post-game prayer, and he did mention some things. So I don't know if maybe it just wasn't as organized as usual, but that was some of the buzz that was going through the locker room. Another thing too, Dan, and you'd be able to speak to this better than I because you have traveled more, but it is my understanding that Kevin Warren typically, and I know this from home games, Kevin Warren typically is not in the locker room after games. He was in the locker room the entire time the media was in there today. Now, it didn't look like he was doing anything with any real purpose other than perhaps providing some support. I mean, that might be the actual answer, but it was odd or rare that he was actually in that locker room while the media was in there the whole time.
I did see him offering some condolences to a handful of players and probably just being that figurehead in that moment and understanding that the locker room is significantly shaken and that there needs to be some show of leadership in there. I would not blame any of those players in the locker room if they chose to not attend the typical post-game prayer after today. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm going to go whatever. We're not going to get into that, but this was just a disaster. It's a fiasco. You can pull up the definition of fiasco on your Google machine, and it'll have a picture of what happened in the final minute here today, because it was disorder, it was dysfunction, it was disappointment, it was dejection, and it leaves the Bears where they always are, in last place, staring up at other teams in their division, wondering why it always goes so poorly for them. And the head coach didn't have any justifiable answers. In fact, he defended his decisions multiple times in that post-game press conference and said, "I like the way we handled it," I believe was his exact quote. At that point, you kind of just shake your head, you drop your notebook, you drop your pen and go, we're not getting anywhere, right? Like, this thing is cooked. It's over. I don't know how we got this far down the road. This is a big boy job, and it's too big for Matt. It is. It's just too big for him. And there's been too many instances during the 6-game losing streak to deny that this job is too big for him. There's too much to manage. There's too much to coordinate. There's too much to keep track of with high stakes, high pressure situations, and they fail in them. And they failed in them in Washington. They failed in them against Green Bay. They failed in them in overtime against the Vikings. They failed in them today with a chance to at least force overtime or win the game late. Again, the Bears had the ball at the 25-yard line with first down, and Caleb Williams dealing. He had brought them from the 1-yard line, right? They're 74 yards removed from where the drive started, and he's dealing at this point. There's a legitimate possibility that if they don't commit a couple penalties and get backed up, that he throws a touchdown pass to win the damn game in regulation.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm rambling, and
no.
It's just unbelievable. This is our existence again.
It's needed, man. It's good stuff. Caleb Williams on the day, 20 of 39, 256 yards, 3 TDs in the second half. Again, did not throw an interception. A gorgeous 31-yard touchdown pass to DJ Moore. Keenan Allen had 2 of the touchdown passes. He was great in that second half. Now, there was a lot of inaccurate moments, I thought, in this game for Caleb Williams. But again, when it came down to it, he was big time for sure. And I know that you'll dig deeper on Caleb Williams in the coming days in this game once we've watched the tape here again. But Caleb Williams, I mean, for the most part, had a good game. Inaccuracies were occurring, but big plays when they needed them.
Big plays when they needed them, and overcame, as you mentioned at the outset of the podcast, a disastrous first half. The Bears didn't have their first down until the final minutes of the second quarter. By that point, the Lions had 18 first down and something like 250 total yards before the Bears got their first down of the football game. And in most years, with most quarterbacks, you'd go, they're cooked for today. Put a fork in them, it's over. To see Caleb come back in the second half with that level of competitive grit and resilience and play the way he played against a really good football team in their building was impressive. And he was about to lead another drive again in front of a national audience with people at home all across the country watching this game on national TV. That would have gone into the books as like this signature moment, like, oh my God, he just led them from the 1 yard line for either a game tying or go ahead drive in the final minutes of a Thanksgiving Day game. You can't script it any better. And then it all unravels. Now, look, I'm not letting him completely off the hook for the end of the game situation, because he's got to be quicker. And I get it. The moment gets a little bit frenzied, and it's hard to like put yourself in his shoes and trying to figure out what you do after you've been sacked with 32 seconds, but you got to get things going quicker. You have to get to 4th down one way or the other, whether it's a Hail Mary, a kick, whatever it is, you have to have the 4th down play before this game ends. And Caleb didn't get that done. And he's changing the play with, 15 seconds left or whatever it is. And then he gets down below 10 and you still only get one shot at it at that point. I don't know, man. The other thing you can criticize him on, and it's hard to fully fault him on, is the sack by Zadarius Smith. It's a free runner coming right at him.
Yeah.
Get the ball in the 3rd row of the seats. You know what I mean? Live for that to be 3rd and 20 with that ball in the 1st row of the seats, and there's 32 seconds left and the clock is stopped, and now you can get things. Those are things a rookie quarterback will learn from. But the head damn football coach is there to help protect you and to save you and to rescue you and to calm the freaking situation down.
Your head coach was bad in the beginning of the game. He did not have this team. And I know it's like the easy thing to say when you come out bad. Yeah, Matt Eberflus did not have this team mentally focused in the first half. To your points, Dan, about some of the numbers in the first half, let me read some of these to you. Bad. You ready?
Yes.
Total yards after the 16-0 Detroit, by the way, at the end of...
Should have been 30, right?
Should have been 30, yes. Oh, yeah. Total yards, 279 to 53, Detroit. Detroit leads all these. I don't need to say that. Rushing, 144 to 19. Passing, 135 to 34. Offensive plays, just for the hell of it, 47 to 19. And you mentioned this one as well. First downs, 18 to 2 after 2 quarters of play. I was more, I mean,
let me give you one more. Let me give you one more.
Yeah, hit me.
Time of possession, 22:54 to 7:06.
Oh, my God. I got to tell you, the offense, I thought maybe they were going to get 1 possession per quarter, to your point right there, because they had 1 possession in the first quarter. That was it. And then they got their second possession in the second quarter of play. So the offense looked pathetic. I was more pissed off about the defense for a lot of that first half.
Oh, no doubt.
For example, I put down 3 painful plays. I'm just going to give you one of these right now from the second quarter. It's 10-0 Detroit. The Lions convert on a freaking 2nd and 23. And on that same play, and now this will sound familiar to people who watch the game or listen to the game, Byron Coward also called for roughing on that play. Now, the Bears they did a good job of keeping the Lions out of the end zone. It leads to a field goal. 13-0 Lions at that point, but everything counted. And that was just so typical that a 2nd and 23 looked easy for Detroit on that particular play. So that's what was jarring to me. Like the explosive run, like Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery were putting on an absolute show and they're good. Yeah. They're very good. but the Bears played horribly as far as their run defense was concerned. They were worse than Detroit was good. I'm sorry.
Look, I think Jahmyr Gibbs averaged over 11 yards per carry in the first half, and then the Lions gave him 2 carries in the second half with a big lead. I won't understand that. Ben Johnson will have to kind of answer that as they do their cleanup from another win. By the way, the franchise record 10th consecutive win for the Lions here today ties the record from 1934. But they let the Bears hang around, and the Bears have done a great job this year of hanging around. And there was a point in the fourth quarter where you go, well, clearly this team hasn't quit. They're still grinding. They're still battling. They're still making plays that give them a chance to stay in this football game to the very end. And then you're like, holy crap, they're going to win this football game. They're actually going to win this football game.
Yeah.
And then the last 36 seconds happened, right? And I guess it starts before that because you have the hands to the face penalty by Tevin Jenkins and little things with this Bears team almost always lead to huge ramifications up the road. And there were a couple of them today, including the Bears. You mentioned it earlier. They used their second timeout with 43 seconds remaining, coming off an incompletion when they got too low in the play clock. So it wasn't even like a completion down the field. They're hustling up. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do. It's an incompletion. And then you're so late in the play clock that you have to use timeout number 2. I'm assuming if they had 2 timeouts left with 36 seconds, Matt would not have hesitated to use one of them after the Zadarius Smith sack.
Another painful moment on my list also in crunch time in the fourth quarter, Cole Kmet with 1:04 to go, 23-20 Detroit. He commits that offensive pass interference, which I don't have it down here, but it was a 4th and 4, a big gain to DJ Moore.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a pass interference penalty down the field on former Bear Kendall Vildor, of all people.
Yeah, he had that, but Cole Kmet didn't he?
Oh, you're talking about the pass interference penalty that negated DJ's big game.
Yes, and then Kendall makes the what felt like a life-saving pass interference. I was like, I'm not sure about that call there, but it was called. I'll say another thing too, Dan, to your point of the Bears coming back. Lions fans were booing here late in the game. I mean, not like all out, like pockets of the stadium were like, oh no, you're going to pull this shit again, because they've been so bad on Thanksgiving for so long. And they also know how bad the Bears are. And they watched what happened in the first half. So they were incensed. I can't imagine the Lions feel real good about themselves while heading out of this stadium today.
I mean, they'll have a long week to kind of regroup, and it's a lot easier to regroup when you're 11-1, and you're leading the division and you've got all that wind at your back at this point heading into the month of December, and the Bears are in a totally different state. No, by the way, the other moment, I get it, Matt's in an unwinnable spot, but when he stands up at that lectern after the game and says, we're right there, just one more crack of the hammer, GTFO, I mean, like GTFO, we're not one crack of the hammer away. You're a 4-8 football team that was 4-2 at your bye week, and the only crack of the hammer is going to bring the whole building down to Haugh Hall down, right? Like, I mean, we're not one crack away from the Bears suddenly being the Lions. They're not.
No. Yeah, and he said, that halftime we're gonna pop some big plays, and I guess he was right about that. I mean, the offense certainly came alive, but this is just another disgusting loss. I was thinking too, and this is probably not the episode to do it, but eventually we got to rank these losses, man. Like, do some serious work. And the OT loss to Minnesota last week, the blocked kick against Green Bay, the home loss to New England, which was a disaster, the slaughtered by Arizona on the road, the Hail Mary against Washington. These losses have been devastating. And unfortunately for Matt Eberflus, so he had his hands in so many of these losses, but it's pretty devastating. And that's why players are being open about what happened in the montage that I played for you. And as you said correctly, the players know. They probably knew a couple of weeks ago, honestly, but if you needed another clincher, like this is the clinching of the clincher for Matt Eberflus's fate, this was it, not just for us, the media, and you, the fans listening to and watching the games and the Take the North podcast. In that locker room, players know.
There was such, like, when you talk about rating the losses, you can also put a mood on each one of these too, right? Like there was in Washington, I've never been inside a locker room that was more sort of stunned. Today was aggravated. There was a level of aggravation that hasn't usually existed. It's usually like this dejection and this dispirited feeling that you walk in on. There was a level of aggravation. You heard it in some of the clips you played. We heard it as we bounced around the locker room. Guys are at this point aggravated that this season has gone the way it has because they don't have competent leadership at the top of their football team. It's really sad. And look, like, Grote, if you want to go big picture here, this is why Kevin Warren was brought in, to not just sit by and go, oh, well, like George and Ted used to always do. Like, Kevin's move is now. And I'm assuming that Kevin will talk with Ryan Poles on the plane. I'm assuming he will meet with him back at Haugh when the bus gets back there. I'm assuming he will meet with him in the morning. They will have a conversation with Matt Eberflus. But Kevin Warren was supposed to be the guy that so we don't reach January and you're calling up Ernie Accorsi and Bill Polian to help you figure things out, because you've lived it. You've been inside the walls. You see where all the cracks in the foundation are, and you're responsible for fixing them. It's his move now. There's no question about it. It's his move now. He has to guide Ryan Poles. He has to see where Ryan Poles is at in his headspace, and the two of them in concert have to figure out what the best direction for the Chicago Bears going forward is. And I can't say that Kevin necessarily has to give Ryan, unwavering faith that he's going to make the right decision.
Yeah, and Dan, at this point, if Matt Eberflus is not fired in season, does that tell? Do you agree with me at all that this goes higher than everybody, that it goes to Virginia McCaskey, that it's just what this organization doesn't do is fire a head coach in season? Because Kevin Warren, you know him pretty better just as well as anybody from your Minnesota days. This is an easy public relations move for Kevin Warren to fire this guy. So I believe that this goes way to the top of the hill in terms of just an organizational thing that they do not do. And even if they don't do it, then I think Kevin Warren is powerless to do it.
It requires an explanation. At the minimum, it requires an explanation. And if there is a justifiable explanation about trying to make sure that you don't create mass disruption for Caleb Williams down the stretch of his rookie season, then explain it to the people and let us know what that is. But look, like you talk about just one of the easiest moves you could ever make that no one would second guess. It's simple. You could do it when you get back to Haugh. You could let Matt have Thanksgiving dinner with his family and then call him in the morning and say, I hope that was good stuffing and turkey and cranberry sauce. You're going to have more time with your family in December. It's heartless, but this is a cruel freaking league. This is a cutthroat, competitive, professional football league, and that's the job you sign up for. And when you're not capable of handling it, particularly for a organization that should have more pride than the Bears typically do with how they handle themselves, you've got to do something, and like I said, it would be an easy decision. No one would second guess it. You would just have to, again, Grote, figure out who's going to be the person to shepherd you across the finish line for 5 more weeks. And you've got to identify whether that person is in your building and if they are willing, because that's a whole nother ball of wax. Is there someone in there that wants to raise their hand and say, I'll do it?
You know what, Dan? Especially when you look at this, who wants to be the coach to take the Bears into San Francisco, which is their next game, and then after that into Minnesota, and then home against the Lions after that, and then home against Seattle, and then at Green Bay. That's a great point, man. I don't think any coach wants that on their resume, because I'm not seeing any wins here. Maybe Seattle at home, but I mean, this looks like, especially reading between the lines and the body language in the locker room, it's a wrap for the wins this season. Maybe Seattle.
And those who think that Thomas Brown should be a candidate, no. Like, Thomas Brown needs to spend all his time in the current role that he just got 2.5 weeks ago, which is offensive coordinator. He needs to continue being hands-on and fully invested in the continued growth of Caleb Williams and the offense. And so to then put him in charge of special teams, to then put him in charge of defense, to then put him in charge of game management, it's not fair to Thomas Brown. It's not fair to the offense. It's not fair to Caleb Williams. So do you have somebody else on your staff that can handle the role, right, to take you down the stretch? It's just, I mean, it is, again, Mark, they had 1st and 10 at the 25 in the final minute. And here we are talking about the plunger on the detonator. You know what I mean? And the reality that it could happen by the time we start recording our next episode. There's a possibility that it happens by then.
Yeah.
And again, no one would be stunned by it, correct?
Correct. Yeah. No, nobody would be stunned by it. And as you said, it would be met with 100% approval, and the Bears would be roundly applauded. I think of it like the Blackhawks when Rocky Wirtz took over and he did the minimum, which, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put home games back on television. And everybody's like, yeah, wow, Rocky Wirtz is great. I'm going to bring back Pat Foley. Yeah, this guy's awesome. No, it's what you do. It was the easy move, and you became kind of your own little cult hero until he wasn't anymore. But it would be the same reaction for Kevin Warren, for Ryan Poles if they did this, but I don't think it's going to happen. But I guess we'll stand by and see.
Right before we came on, Grote, I had like 165 unread texts in my phone. One of them was from a thread of Bears fans. I won't name names, but they constantly chime in during games. People that I knew growing up, and they were all bracing for what one of them said is the testicle punch that we all know is coming. As the Bears crossed midfield on the potential game-tying, game-winning drive, they were guessing the way that the Bears were going to have their testicles punched here. There was a thought that there was going to be a snap over Caleb Williams' head. There was a thought that there was going to be an interception in the end zone. There was a thought that there was going to be another blocked kick. This is the existence of Bears fans right now, and this is what they've conditioned people to feel. It's got to change. It's got to reverse course, and you can't wait another day.
You know what I think? I think while the defense was standing on the sideline watching the offense out there, they were also wondering, when's the next punch to the testicles? They took a lot of punches to the testicles themselves. I'm not saying the defense was good, but they were probably watching the Bears offense and saying to themselves, how is this going to implode? And I'll be damned if it didn't.
We said a couple weeks ago that we were considering a rebranding of the podcast to Picking Up the Pieces. Now we can officially rename it Punch to the Testicles, and we'll just do it every week. We'll just talk about the punch to the testicles of that given week.
Yeah, I think that's much more memorable. And we are taking your request for the change of name and Take the North. I still like the question mark, though. Take the North? No, yes.
The Lions have got it. They took it. They took it.
Back. They got it. They're not anytime soon. Dan, any final thoughts before how about a 5-hour drive back to Chicago?
You're driving back. I got to go stay at a Fairfield Inn with the salad that I threw in my mini fridge before I left today. That's going to be my Thanksgiving dinner. We did get to share Thanksgiving dinner this morning, Grote, at about 10 o'clock Chicago time. That feels like 14 lifetimes ago. But
that was delightful.
What a nice little spread. And then we, I don't know if you want to share right now, we watched some animals die at our table.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, so we're sitting there like a group of reporters. Like I said, they do a great Thanksgiving spread here, like all the fixins, and it's very good. The turkey was excellent. I'm a lot of people like the fixins better. I like the turkey, but there was a gentleman that joined us at the table, and he was from Detroit. He had like a Detroit jacket on, and we're just sitting there, and all of a sudden, it looks like he's kind of starting to choke a little bit. And then he was spitting up. And I'm like, hey, man, are you okay? And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. And he gets up, walks off, and never did return. Never did return. So I hope that man is okay. He didn't look good. I don't know if he knew where he was at when he was sitting with us.
We'll always have that moment, Grote. We'll always have that moment. That's what a trip here to Detroit for Thanksgiving. What a freaking trip.
Like I said, sitting next to my colleague Chris Emmett today. You know what, Chris? I am glad that I got to share this game with you because, of course, there's a running dialogue, I'm sure, with you and all the beat reporters too on your side of the press box. It's the same with us, and we were just like, I mean, this was like 3 different games here today.
Oh, 100%, and all anyone will remember is those last 36 seconds.
That's it. And we are out of here for now, but stay tuned because there's going to be a lot of hard questions asked. Who knows? Maybe a change, but we shall see. The Bears have a little extra time off before their next game, and the rugged end of the season schedule shaping up to be just as bad as it looked at the beginning of the season. And so for Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune and frequent score contributor, and for Adam Stanzinski, our executive producer, I am Mark Grote. Thank you for listening to and watching the Take the North podcast.
Punch to the testicles. Great talk. See you out there.
Fair.